Hey, this is Notser, and today we're taking a look at the Tier 8 Premium Soviet Battleship, Lenin. We're on the map Neighbors. The build is on the screen. This is absolutely work in progress. Now, it's a Tier 8. It's going to be the main premium for the Soviet Battleship line, and honestly, it does a really good job of representing the typical playstyle that the Soviet Battleship line will encompass. Now, it is very familiar to another ship in the game, the Nelson. This has 9 406mm guns. The Nelson also has it. And it has a giant gonzo nose. They're all forward mounted, which allows you to angle your bow towards the enemy and rotate your guns from starboard to port, and you don't necessarily have to wait for a very long turret rotation. In fact, the number 2 gun turret has a 360 traverse. So this has a really great appeal to someone who is familiar with the Nelson, but it's not as egregiously impractical as the Izuma gun layout. So right off the bat, it's already really appealing, and I think anyone who has fallen in love with the Nelson, they'll fall in love all over again with the Lenin. So let's see how well this works out. Obviously, I have a couple friendlies on this flank. We have a DD on A point and a DD on B point, and I'm just trying to move forward so I can help with my guns. The universal trait to most Soviet battleships is that they have a citadel above the waterline. It is, in fact, on the Leningrad, it is outside of the ship. I think it's about 350 millimeters, maybe 400 in that realm. It has 32 millimeter bow and stern with average of 40 to 50 millimeters of deck armor. So it does a really good job of mitigating high explosive damage and forcing a lot of shatters out, unless they have plenty of penetration. Now, obviously, this is incredibly dangerous. And note that I am making a huge mistake. Honestly, the first mistake was sailing forward towards the enemy. I feel like I have to turn back if I have a chance of survival. And by turning back, clearly, I'm opening the ship up to be punished. Now, we didn't lead the lightning as much as we should have. Probably, honestly, could have killed him if I would have just aimed more directly at his position. But I was able to successfully turn the ship around, and we're going to retreat. This giant, absolutely giant gonzo nose, it absorbs a ton of damage. A metric ton of damage. And you've got to try and hide it as much as you can. Right, these are pretty standard strategy that you would employ. And just like the Kreml, it has that reduced accuracy past 15 kilometers. It's not unusable, but you certainly want to try and engage targets that are within 15, and the closer, the better. Now look at the number 2 gun turret. This is the proof that it has a 360 gun turret rotation. It's already in position to fire, and it took, half a second because it can rotate 360. Now they did capture B point, and we've already lost 2 ships. We've got to try and salvage some of this. Friendly was under attack by the Massachusetts, the Judge and the Kid, so I was just going to try and fire a broadside. And yeah, you can see that number 2 gun turret. People were like, whoa, does it have 360? It does have 360, and of course, there's an enemy DD that could totally spot us. Now, I did take fire prevention, basics of survivability, also that damage control duration module, and then on top of that, signal flags. I've gone all in on reducing fire's impact on my ship. Since this only has limited charge damage control, a lot of fire has to just go out on its own. Because a single fire being used with your damage control, it's a disadvantage to you. You're falling into a trap if you're trying to do that with these ships. But if you can employ the similar strategy that I have with the limited duration, honestly, it feels really natural. It feels natural to allow the short duration single to go off, but to always use your damage control for everything that is 2 or more. I haven't run out of damage control yet employing that exact strategy. So everything seems to be working all right as far as the build is concerned. I just need to land some shots. And we're doing okay. I've got my nose presented towards the enemy, which is honestly the most important thing. I could choose to fire high explosive, and that is totally an option. But from my experience with these guys, it's not that good. If I can aim effectively with AP, I'm going to see a larger return on that than if I were to try and use high explosive. It's just, yeah, it's more American than British in the realm of, consistent damage, penetration, all that stuff. And I can place these AP shells with enough accuracy that I can, pretty much average like 10,000 damage on the superstructure. So that's what I try and employ mostly on my Soviet battleships, and it seems to work very well. I don't necessarily know that it's the absolute best build, but it certainly feels very effective. And just when I was lining up a shot on the North Carolina, a whole bigger prize shows up. The enemy Belfast shows up, so of course we're going to aim at him. We get a citadel, we get a penetration, but we get 6 overpen. So we probably could have blapped him out of existence if we would not have received so much overpen. But I feel incredibly awkward in this position because on one hand, there's a Scharnhorst that is all the way on the western side of my ship, but this North Carolina is holding a perfect broadside, so I am very vulnerable here. I'm trying to rush forward, I'm trying to get into cover before the North Carolina or the closer Scharnhorst can rotate around and use his torpedoes. While all that's going on, just easily shooting the Scharnhorst. Just like the Nelson, if you present your bow towards the target and you merely rotate your guns port to starboard, starboard to port, it's very easy to always have great presented armor and to have great damage output. It really feels very natural for a player who has played the Nelson. This is exactly what you expect. More of the same. We're getting a nice collection of these forward-mounted ships. We've got, of course, the Nelson, the Izimo, and now the Lenin. The Izimo recent buffs, it's a great experience. The only thing that's really disappointing about the Izimo at this point is the odd nature of its gun turrets. And obviously I'm happy to announce that the Lenin at least does not have to deal with that. It's very much like the Nelson. And, of course, he's barely alive. Just fire one little salvo off, get rid of him, see you later. More torpedoes. Obviously the Belfast didn't send that because the Belfast don't have torpedoes. That would be the most broken thing in the game. I think we actually have another target in this smoke, and enemy North Carolina fires on our position, and it absolutely is. So I'm just going to angle a little bit, get my nose guns on the target, and then angle right back. That enemy Scharnhorst is barely alive. I didn't want to waste a salvo. And I'm going to present my angled nose armor towards the enemy North Carolina. Friendly's torpedo out of existence. That Scharnhorst I was trying to rotate around. We're actually set up for success. So enemy North Carolina showing a broadside target. The enemy is attempting to capture C point. We do find the citadel, and the back two are ready to go. Once again, aim at the waterline, and once again, since it's a Soviet battleship, very consistent, usable accuracy, especially at this range. You can't afford to show your side to any Soviet battleships like this. It is way too punishing. And in response to the enemy maybe looking to fire on me, I'm going to make a little bit sharper angle, and once the shells have actually made contact, then I'm going to dip right back out and take advantage of that fast turret traverse. If you can really get into the groove of this, the Soviet battleships just end up feeling very effective. And oh man, the placement of the shells. He angled just enough that the 406 could not penetrate. I think they hit the top of his hull, so we needed to hit near the superstructure in that situation. And going to angle against the target. Incredibly hard for him. Very minimal superstructure in the rear, giant nose. There's no way he could bust through the citadel. The armor's way too thick. And as I was angling my guns to fire on the North Carolina, he was about to go broadside to me. He was actually broadside to a brother from another mother, the Nelson, the Tier 7 British battleship that has very similar features. And we're so far away from the enemy, it's going to be a while as we rotate the guns in the ship and start sailing that way. So the Lenin, Very pleasant experience. Honestly, it's outstanding. I find that the ship has all of the features that the Soviet battleships bring, but it's also a unique experience. This is the only Soviet battleship with all forward-mounted guns. It's the Tier 8 Premium. This is probably going to be the premium that you see the most for the Soviet battleships, if I'm going to be completely honest. And, it's just a great experience. It's got 406mm guns with plenty of penetration. It's got insane accuracy. And honestly, the insane accuracy goes across the board with every single Soviet battleship that I've played. The Great Turret Traverse is at the higher tiers, though. I think Tier 6 or Tier 5 is where it's pretty slow. I think Tier 6 is like 60 seconds. But outside of that, Tier 7, 8, 9, 10, plus the Tier 8 Premium, all 30-second turret traverse. It's really exciting to have the Soviet battleships have so many different features that they're bringing online. Some of the features probably need to be tweaked a little bit. I know that these guys are punishable, and I'm not trying to allow that. I'm trying to always have just the right amount of angle so that the enemy can't punish it. But if I were to make a mistake, the citadels are really easy to access, and that's a concern for players who want to try and contribute to their team in a comfortable way. So I don't know that necessarily they're brokenly OP, because all of the features that they have implemented, it's a little bit higher level of battleship play. You have to consider a little bit more always, and I like that. I think that's an intriguing aspect of them. It feels very much like a cruiser almost level of thought being given to the game, more so than your typical battleship. And we miss out on the kill, just barely, of course. Enemy Alaska, less than 1,000 life. Looks like he's going to burn down. He does burn down, and all that's left, one enemy cruiser and one enemy DD in this cruiser. Oh, he takes a torpedo. The Nelson tried to lead him in reverse. Since he's slowing down, I'm going to lead him in the bow area of the ship, hoping that he moves forward. He does look like he's moving forward, but I think he's moving forward too fast. Oh, gosh. Of course, the dispersion. That's a rare one, but it is outside of the 15-kilometer range. It is something that it's just going to be like turning the switch on or off. It's either accurate or it isn't a lot of times, and you're going to have to live with that. I had to live with friendlies finishing the target off and me missing that last shot. But, 124,000 damage done. We've barely scratched the surface. Haven't even used a damage control yet. We've got 2 more heals, 3 more radar charges. This ship, and honestly, the Soviet battleship playstyle, is a great experience for me. It has all the quality of life improvements that I expect from the Nelson, but it's a Soviet battleship at Tier 8 that employs all of the unique traits that the Soviet battleships are bringing to the table. So it's a really great blend of the old and the new. And I think that's going to make it incredibly popular. I think anyone who loves the Nelson will love the Lenin, and vice versa. And, the more people who get to play the updated Izimo, that's going to cause even more love affair. These kinds of ships are just interesting. They're different. And I think that's really cool. And I think the Lenin just nails it. They nailed every aspect. They brought the Soviet traits in, the surface radar that's only usable against battleships and aircraft carriers, limited damage control, the accuracy that improves at close range. It's got a lot of stuff that's working for it. Now, it does have a shallower range. That is a Soviet trait as well. But everything's working out great. Now, I did switch to high explosive. The grouping of the shells against DDs when they're close is actually very powerful. This might be one of the reasons why Battleship AP was nerfed, just through my initial Soviet battleship experience. The high explosive works really well when you only have to fire against DDs, so don't pass that up either. Team, we carried. The Lenin's great. Leave in the comments what you think. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.